Welcome back to the program. One of the most conservative state representatives in Arkansas, politician, really one of the most conservative political minds that there is, State Representative Josh Miller, District 66. That's the Heber Springs area. Josh, welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Always good to be with you.
Absolutely. So, are you down at the Marble Palace listening to some of these budget hearings, or are you staying away? What are you doing?
I went down Tuesday morning, and I listened to the governor and heard a few other things. Took care of some other business, and then I'm going back. I'm planning on going back this morning, but man, I've just had to work because somebody's got to generate some tax revenue to pay for all that stuff. And I feel like maybe that's where part of my responsibility lies.
Yeah,
I don't know.
To continue to put the nose to the grindstone, continue to work and generate that tax revenue for the almighty government.
That is it.
Well, okay, so some developments. I want to get your thoughts on this. You have the beginning of the week. You have a tax farce meeting, and then the guy that they got, the lifelong liberal Democrat, Randy Bauer, he doesn't even have the right tax brackets. So they have another meeting that wasn't planned in the afternoon, and they fire the guy. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I would never be one to say I told you so. But I will say this, that there were several of us who, after hearing about this and looking into it just a little bit, had said, this is a bad idea. For one, we're wasting, I don't remember, what was it, $300 and something thousand or something like that of taxpayer money for somebody to come in and do the job of the tax force. So that didn't make sense in the first place. And then the selection of the guy that they picked was atrocious. And so, this doesn't. Hey, I guess I'd say I'd give him credit for realizing they screwed up and firing him.
Yeah.
I guess they could have kept it going, but anyway, they should never been in that situation to begin with. This whole thing's just been a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and of course, you say you give them credit for doing the right thing, and I think a lot of people are like you, and they knew they were in a bad spot. Of course, you have leadership saying, no, we got our money's worth. It was still a good idea, but this is just time. It's time now to part ways. It's like, come on, man. Let's just admit defeat here, admit that we made a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, but here's one where you really just can't avoid to not admit it just makes you look, I think, more incompetent, honestly.
You're exactly right. The first step to looking intelligent is admitting where you're wrong, which is what I do a lot of often.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, Josh Miller, I want to know about this spending increase. Okay, so we had an amazing example of carefully crafted language yesterday. The headline in the Gazette was correct. $172 million increase proposed in spending by Governor Asa Hutchinson. And yet you had other people that, the governor's office was saying, no, it's a $100 million cut, confusing people. I had a phone call yesterday afternoon, somebody say, what is the truth here? And I had to say, well, it's just, to me, it's outright deception because it's not a $100 million cut. You're just claiming it's a cut because it was all about the proposal. He proposed to spend $100 million more last year. Now he's proposing to spend $100 million less, but it's still $172 million increase from the year before. What are your thoughts to the fact that we can't seem to shrink government in Arkansas, State Representative Josh Miller? We keep spending more money.
Well, you just said it, Paul. We just cannot manage to find our conservative backbone, period, and tighten up the spending belt here. It is very confusing to people, very deceptive. People, hear some sound bites here and there and here. Well, oh, this is a net spending reduction over what was projected last year based on some other projections down the road. And then we look around and we circled around the ballpark and been to the moon and back. And so basically we're spending $64 million less than what we were projected to spend 2 years ago when, just a whole line of just junk, man. And the bottom line, the numbers don't lie. You can look. People need to know. You look, what did the state of Arkansas spend last year or in the current fiscal year? What are we set to spend? And then we look at okay, what are we proposing now? Which is what it sounds like these headlines are doing. And you wind up with $172 or $3 million, whatever it is, additional amount that is being spent or being spent. Lord, I just sounded like a redneck right there. That's being spent over what we spent the last time around. Now there's no way around that, but they know that, so they're not going to talk about that. And they're going to go out and say, well, we have cut spending. We're slashing government. We have cut spending. But they make all those statements based off of projected spending. Well, Paul, I can project that I'm going to spend $5 million in the year 2018. Personally, I'm projecting right now on your radio, I'm going to spend $5 million. But you know what? I bet you I can come back on your radio in about a month and say, you know what? I have cut spending for 2018 by $4,950,000. I've experienced a $4.9 something million cut in spending. Now, how stupid is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's what's going on here.
Yeah. And so it's a game. How much of this do you think has to do with it being an election year and the governor's facing a primary opponent in Jan Morgan?
Well, I think it all has to do with that. I unfortunately, I have lost confidence that we were actually going to budget conservatively, and then when Miss Morgan started getting in the race, I thought, well, hey, you know what? Maybe this will kind of steer us back in the other direction, and it has steered the conversation back in the other direction. But it hasn't steered the actual work enough. And that's the thing that folks just have to know is that we are still continuing. I mean, 173 million more.
Yeah.
And I mean, how conservative would it be to just say to me, this is not being real conservative, but to just say, you know what? We're not going to spend any more than we spent last year.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that?
How hard is that? Apparently, it's really hard because we haven't done it ever in any year since Governor Hutchinson has been here, and that's what's so discouraging about this. And I like how you said, he's and basically he's trying to pivot to the right or appear to pivot to the right, but there's actually no substance there. And I would suggest it's just realistically impossible for there to be any substance because for 3 years he's budgeted and governed one way. To think that you can turn that around and there aren't lasting effects, in a month's time or 3 months' time or whatever is just unrealistic. There are consequences from what you do. Just like any business owner, you try to plan out not just a year ahead, a couple of years ahead. That's exactly what he's been doing. Well, you would think, in his mind, the things have been built up. Government has grown to such a degree, it's almost like we have to spend an extra $172 million next year because of our commitments, which is what brings us to the next point, which would be Arkansas Works. Go ahead, though, first.
Well, you're exactly right about that. I mean, here's the deal. The rhetoric has gone to the right, but the budgeting hasn't. And then here's a little side note on that, and this may be something you were fixing to get into, but Brian King pointed this out Tuesday after the governor was finished and we were discussing the DFNA was presenting the budget, and the whole deal. The governor's office, DHS, been bragging about oh, we've cut 100 and something thousand people off Medicaid. Well, in 2016, when it was election year, I think when the governor had hired somebody to run against me and a few other candidates, he was out here saying that, we had to have Arkansas Works, also known as Medicaid expansion, also known as Obamacare. We had to have that. We had to have all these people signed up on Medicaid, or there was going to be a hole in the budget and no more potholes in any highway in the state of Arkansas were ever going to get filled. We were going to run out of asphalt. We won't be able to pave roads, and we do have a serious highway problem. But our highway budget would be, nil and void if we didn't pass Medicaid expansion again. Mm-hmm. Well, now what's changed? What has changed from then to now? And now we're out here bragging about we got rid of 100-something thousand people, which I'm all for, and I applaud the governor's office and DHS for scrubbing the rolls and eliminating people that are ineligible and all this kind of stuff. I'm not knocking that at all. I want to be very clear about that. But I'm just wanting to, this is an example of rhetoric here and how it's misleading and deceptive. What has changed over the last year and a half that has gotten us to where we don't, we can get rid of the folks on Medicaid, but we don't have a hole in the budget. Anyway, I maybe am digressing.
No. You're certainly saying, everything I agree with. And so the last question, we need to cap this enrollment. I mean, at this point, right? You got that through the committee last session to cap enrollment on Arkansas Works, so we can have at least a knowable cost. And then, if somebody drops off, they can't sign back up. The governor didn't like that proposal. Why not?
Well, we did. We got it through the committee in the House. Got it through it passed on the House floor. Died over in the Senate committee. I think Senator John Cooper and some other staunch conservatives helped defeat it. But the governor didn't like it. They said it was an artificial cap. Now, I challenged them on that. I said after the deal was going to be, we were going to submit the bill called for DHS to submit a waiver to CMS, to the federal government, to allow us to cap enrollment, to freeze enrollment after I think the date was July the 1st. And I said, no, there's nothing artificial, because after July the 1st, how many people we have is how many we have. It'll never go above that, just in the Medicaid expansion part. This had nothing to do with traditional Medicaid. No grandmas were going to get kicked out of the nursing homes or anything like that. This was just the Medicaid expansion part. But, they wanted to do it their way, and so far that has yet to happen. Mm-hmm. It has yet to happen. And, they say they're waiting on the federal government or whatever. I don't know, but I am in favor of bringing this enrollment freeze back up.
Yeah.
And I know some others are as well, and let's just see what happens with it.
Yeah, let's see what happens. All right, well, State Representative Josh Miller, sir, I appreciate it. Be safe down at the Marble Palace, and good luck to you. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, so, hey, folks.